Welcome to the Creative Plan Podcast Network. Join us as we share our favorite RPGs, one-shot games, tabletop games, reviews of items, and convention panels, and other exciting things that we run into from time to time. Sit back and enjoy the show.
Hi, this is Kelly, aka Trixie from Ragnarok and Roll, a Sign to Ragnarok story, and Tilda Wimblewick from D&D Journey of the 5th Edition. First off, I would just like to say thank you to everyone for listening to our varied adventures, as well as for rating us on iTunes and rpgpodcast.com. If you haven't rated us yet, we would greatly appreciate it if you could. And if you're looking for more ways to support our efforts, we are now on Patreon, a great site where you can help us continue making more podcasts, as well as some special surprises for our patrons. If you can, please look us up at www.patreon.com/cppn. Every little bit helps. And again, thank you for listening.
I've had producers in Hollywood ask me if I'm a patron.
Really? Okay, so it's becoming more industry
Absolutely.
accepted. I didn't know that.
Well, there used to be a thing that it was short-lived. It was about a year and a half. It was pretty good. I don't know what happened to it. It was short-lived. It's called Clout. You guys remember Clout?
Mm-hmm.
Clout was a good thing because what Clout did is it aggregated all of your social media sites and it gave you a global social media score. I actually know of producers and directors and showrunners and everybody. They wouldn't look at you unless your clout was like above a 55.
Because marketing-wise, if you're working with a writer who is better known, who has more clout, that makes sense. I mean, a lot of people get on the film studios, producers. They get on you for like, oh, they're picky and they won't invest in stuff. But it's a business for them. They have to invest in things that they know will make money. I know with Kickstarter a number of years ago. The Veronica Mars movie was one of the first full budget, theatrically released things to be Kickstarter funded. And if you're interested in Kickstarter, I highly recommend, I don't know if it's available in digital copies, but if you have the DVD copy of that movie, there's an entire documentary on how they did the Kickstarter start to finish, on how fans were involved. And it has fascinating interviews with how all of the executives at Warner Brothers felt about the Kickstarter, and they were very happy. Because at that time, mystery movies weren't something they can invest in. And they actually cut a deal with Warner Brothers, who owned rights. They said, if we fund and make this film, you have to distribute it for us. And there was a whole contract before the Kickstarter even happened. So they did this weird hybrid of stuff that happened. It's fascinating. So I think if you're a creator and you are considering any of, there's so many opportunities out there now online with these tools you can use. Any of this stuff, and you go to a panel and you talk to us, don't be like, I'm going to do your exact plan. Pick and choose what works for you, because there's definitely different levels that you can.
It has to be a hybrid thing.
Do it, a hybrid thing, yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I know all you guys are here because you want to make money, but to me, at least half the benefit of using Kickstarter and Patreon, like Weston is talking about, it isn't flat about making money, it's about getting to do projects where you have support while you're doing the projects and motivation. You have fans who are maybe reading, are you posting, I think, as you're writing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're getting feedback from people who like you enough to pay on Patreon every month. So they're paying customers who tell you if what you're doing is any good or not. They're paying you to tell you if, years ago, you would have to hire, people to do this for you. Yeah. And essentially, people will now pay you to tell you what they want you to make. It's great.
Almost
so
like getting beta readers, right?
What?
Almost like getting beta readers.
Yeah, like getting beta readers that are paying to be your beta readers that are, your biggest fans. So
wow.
It's actually, they get a bonus out of it, but you do as well. And, because I also do paintings, one of the things I do is, if you look at any of my books, like this one that we did last year, this is a 160-page book with a picture at least, some of them are 2-page spreads, but okay, it's at least 80 pictures. I pre-sold most of these on Patreon before I even painted them. So what I do is, if you're a Patreon subscriber, and when I started doing Patreon, it was because people asked me for one. I was like, oh, okay. And I was just gonna do tiny little things, and everyone said, no, you have to put original paintings up there. And I was like, that's insane. Then what else I could do with a payment plan? You subscribe for 4 months, you get a painting. At $30 a month, I'm going to get a decent amount, and I'm going to have all my paintings sold from my books. And then the ones that are even more detailed, Patreon subscribers get first choice to buy them at 20% off. I don't have to list them, I don't have to go to galleries, I don't have anybody else taking a cut. So I get that material to use in my printed products, but I'm pre-selling that stuff, and I know I have 9 paintings sold a month that are paying my mortgage. Like, that's great. Like, having that level of reliable income is like a huge thing. And reliable people supporting like a project that you're doing, whether it's chapters in a book or paintings for a project. Or do you let people vote on anything for your projects?
No, I don't. I have my own thing. My big deal is that I have it's not a self-worth issue. I know that I'm a great writer. I know that I can do things, right? But it's the idea of there's so many degrees of separation between me and my readership, right? So to actually engage my readership on a 1 degree of separation is kind of scary. So,
and it's totally a different experience.
It is a totally different experience. And what made me decide to go Patreon is we all know who Amanda Palmer is,
Mm-hmm.
right? So Amanda Palmer, Neil Gaiman's wife, and she was here 2017, I think, because her family lives in Tucson, and they did a pop-up show at the theater, and we went to see some foods and saw her and everything else. And I had heard of Patreon before. I really didn't know what it was. So what I did is I went on her site, and on her site there's a big long thing where she talks about this is why I do Patreon, and people want to help you. They want to be involved in the creative process. It's not like you're pushing yourself on them. They're tacitly asking you to be part of your process. And that changed a little bit my mindset as well. Plus, she has 34,000 patrons, about $9 a month.
Oh my gosh, that's insane.
So you
That's
know,
insane.
so you can do the math on that. You know, she can breathe, have a cup of coffee, and she's made $500.
Well, a big part of it too is as a creator, you are putting so much time into writing a book, painting a picture, doing both, making music, whatever you do. How much control do you want over that when it's released? What font is used? What does the cover look like? How is it going to be marketed? Some people, they don't want to, it's a lot of work. They don't want to even be involved in hiring people. They want a publisher to do that, and that's awesome. But if you also choose to do it through Kickstarter or Patreon, you get full control over that stuff. And if you have a lot of subscribers, you can actually ask them. So my initial books were all kind of 6x9 books. They were this size. And we started going to like the 8x10s, and these are more expensive. I mean, this is a full color book. And we just did, the one we just funded is a 200-page 8x10 full color book. Very expensive. So I said, hey, for the next project, why don't we go back to doing like a smaller, more affordable book that I want to give you guys like a break because you just spend all this money on like an expensive one. Let me give you guys a budgetary break and we'll do the next one. No. There was a resounding no. We don't care if it costs $10 to $15 more. We want the big book. And that like, as a creator is great to know because you don't always have like, you can have the weird things, you can be published, you have so many books out, but you don't always have the confidence for like, what is someone going to spend? And I think people like Kickstarter and Patreon as well because at that point, what you're spending on the book after the printing cost goes entirely to the creator. Some of it might go for marketing or other things, but when it's with a traditional publisher, a lot of it is staying with the publisher. And so I feel like there is that motivation for fans to say, if I invest in this, I know I'm like directly giving to someone who I admire, and that's huge.
You have different tiers?
I do. And actually what happened for me is is that I almost failed my first Kickstarter. So the difference, if you guys don't know, between Kickstarter and Patreon, and there are other services like Indiegogo that are similar, but if you're thinking about it as a creator, I'd recommend going with those two. Some other services, I will flat out say, the back end on Indiegogo is better than Kickstarter or Patreon. The service works better, but they do not have the PR or reputation that Kickstarter does. So you are better on Kickstarter or Patreon than any of the other services, just because they are known and accepted names that people feel comfortable pledging money on. So Patreon is something where people subscribe monthly, and Kickstarter is something where people pledge once. So I use both. When we're working on a book, that's on Patreon, and when we go to print the book, that's the Kickstarter. And I said, I was really shocked that some people would support me every month and then turn around and also like pledge for a physical copy of a book on a Kickstarter. And I started to realize you could use these things together. You could say, they're gonna get a bookmark no one else gets if they do both. Or when I do a deck of cards, they'll get a card in their deck that no one else gets if they do both. It costs me 20 extra cents, but it gives them something that they get a special thank you. And then if there's people on the Kickstarter, they're like, wait a minute, those guys are getting something extra. Let me go check out the Patreon. So anytime you can cross-promote things, I've done things where I've said, if you're a Patreon subscriber, you come find me at a convention and you wear this shirt. We have a lot of people with this t-shirt, it's not blue. You'll get any free $1 item from my booth. So it gets people encouraged to interact in different ways with you. So anytime you can kind of cross those things over, I think is also like really smart as a creator.
So I have a question about the tiers. So does Patreon manage that for you? If you're like, oh, okay, my third tier people get, first view of a picture.
Okay.
Do you have a list, or do they have?
Here's how this works. On both Patreon and Kickstarter, you have tiers. Tiers are the amount of money someone's pledging, whether it's monthly or whatever, and what they get for it. On Patreon, whenever you make a post, it's very similar if you've done other social media, you make a post, but on Patreon you pick, am I posting an image, am I attaching files, am I posting a video, like there's different types of things you can post. When you make that post, you choose, is it public, anyone in the world can see it, is it just for specific tiers to see?
Oh,
so you can actually filter it that way. And then they also tell you if you actually give out monthly rewards. Like I have certain tiers where you get mailed like a little print and a sticker. You get mailed, we start doing collectible trading cards every month, like different things in the mail. It'll actually give you a list of like, here's who gets this, here's their addresses, and they can export it as a spreadsheet. So I just like literally import it, it prints envelopes. Like I have it all automated now. It took me 3 years to figure out how to do it, but it will do that. And Kickstarter is kind of similar. And I think that's a huge point of like, I don't know what tiers you have on yours, but I found that it's very important to have low tiers and high tiers.
Yeah, there's a philosophy out there to have an unreachable tier, right? So I have a $2 tier, I have a $5 tier, I have a $7 tier, $14 tier, $100 tier, and then a $666 tier. I have one person who subscribes to the $100 tier, and most everybody is in the $14 range, because that gives them everything that I do, from coaching to my novels, and I'm posted there, my novellas, I'm posted there, and all the ephemera that I provide. So the $14 gives you pretty much everything, but if you get higher than that, then you get a lot of different shout outs and a lot of different things, and you'll get like a random mail from me, some gift, that I found. It's just something that's kind of fun.
And actually, the weirder you can be with some of your tiers, I have a friend who just started Patreon. I'm so jealous. She's a genius. I'm so mad. She made all of her tiers as if you're stalking her, and the more you pay, the closer you get. And the highest $100 tier is you're licking her brain. And I'm like, I think of that. That is so smart.
That's fabulous.
But there are people who want to support you, who are other authors, other creators, who literally have like $1 a month. And if you have something where, like on mine for $1 a month, you get a lot of visual stuff. You get coloring pages, stuff I'm doing anyway for my coloring books, and you get to vote. If I have, my problem is I have too many ideas. That is a huge problem. So I'll often put up like, here's a list of 25 creatures we're thinking of putting into the project we're working on, and let people vote on their favorites. And then I can be like, oh, here's the 10 that everybody liked, and I won't be going and second guessing myself. So I have some involvement. I'd say if you're offering anything to your fans, and you guys know this probably if you've done anything at conventions, but if you're offering anything to fans, make sure you outline what the limitations are, for sure. Like you're talking about sending people.
Manage their expectations.
Manage their expectations. Like, I'll say, hey, if you subscribe at this level, you can request creatures within reason. It can't be something copyrighted. It can't be something pornographic. Like, there's obviously, like, it has to fit into what we're doing
It can't be
collectively.
something pornographic.
It can't
That's
be.
not a specialty.
But I know plenty of creators who do. That's what OnlyFans is for. If you guys haven't heard of OnlyFans, that's the other one. OnlyFans is very similar to Patreon, but they allow a lot more adult material. And if you really don't care about anything as a creator and just want to make some money, there is a girl on there who wears almost nothing and dips her butt in paint and swirls it on a canvas and sells the canvases for $2,000 a piece and makes a boatload. So they look like nothing, but they were painted with some hot girls' butts. So there you go. There's definitely easier ways to make money if that's all you want to do. But I think as a creator, if what you're trying to do, I think especially here at TusCon, a lot of us, we like to challenge ourselves. We want to keep evolving. And I mean, and even if you're doing commercially published traditional books, you still have that desire, like Weston was talking about, to do projects of your own that might not be as successful or might not be picked up by the traditional.
Or you know, I think that what I'm going to do, once they're finished, I can sell them to a traditional publisher.
Mm-hmm.
It's just now I have a reason to further maximize my.
Well, and your time while you're creating them has some sort of income and motivation for it, which is a huge thing because, like, I was doing 50 or 100-page books when I started doing field guides because there's a lot of paintings. And so even if I was Kickstarter funding them, I felt like I had to have the book almost completely done first. And then once I started getting Patreon, I'm like, okay, my time to do these paintings, and the paintings are sold, my time to work on the book is covered every month. Now I can do 300-page books. That's awesome. So there's definitely a balance, and like a huge part of it is having that support.
Jessica, I can see how this works with artwork. I'm really struggling, and now I swing over to Weston to see how it works for anything longer than something like a short story in written work. Can you discuss that?
Yeah, I serialize.
Okay.
So I have 2 novels going right now. One is The Lost City of Beautiful Things, and then another one I'm writing with Brian Keene, which is Monsters of Sunpan. And he and I have gone back and forth in this. And the deal is I always loved the episodic nature television shows back in the day, you know, where you had clip movies.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of what we're doing with these. And then sure enough, at the end of the year, we're gonna have a finished novel. So that's how you do it. So every 2 weeks, you decide every 2 weeks, every month is when you post something.
And do you consider these to be finished chapters, or are they still kind of in a development stage?
I 80% done, 85% done.
Okay.
I mean, I'm always going to go back and tweak.
Can I also answer his question? I am a Patreon supporter of Wen Spencer. I don't know if any of you have ever read any Wen Spencer. She basically has a Patreon page. She has 3 levels that I'm aware of, 4 levels actually. One of them will get you a guided tour of Hawaii if you ever make it out to Hawaii. That's where she lives, okay? I don't know if anybody's ever taken her up on it. But she posts, when she's not in a depression, unfortunately, she posts pretty much every day or every other day, and she's posting snippets. She writes, and she does a lot of revision. You will see her revisions. You can see her process. So she'll write a paragraph or several paragraphs describing something. She'll think about it. She'll come back the next day. She will have revised it. Okay? I've noticed that she doesn't post any of the conclusions to the chapters. She's doing the setups and its character descriptions and a little bit of the plot, but you have no idea how she's going to solve it. Okay, so she's not complete.
This fascinating thing on social media. If you're a creator of any type, if you post, whether you're writer, woodworker, artist, whatever, you will always get more likes and more attention posting things that are in progress than you will posting finished things. No one will buy an unfinished painting, but they want to see your process. And a big part of Patreon is people are paying to be part of that process. And I know people say, well, okay, but Kickstarter is for a finished thing. I'm not an artist. I just have a novel. What do I do for rewards? Here's the thing. You can very affordably hire an artist to do a couple of promotional pieces for you. Or you can do some very nice graphic design with quotes from your books, with taglines on shirts, with things like that. Like, there's always parts of your creations that people are going to be interested in. And if you're not sure what they're interested in, you ask. That's why you have this like group of people, is because you can ask them, like, what thing would you guys want me to make?
Yeah, she used to ask us, she used to give us a series of 5 or 6 topics and say, okay, I'm going to write a couple paragraphs on one of these topics. It may never show up in the book, but would you like me to write about the first birthday of this person, or the this or that? And we would vote, and then she would write 3 or 4 paragraphs.
Well, that's cool, because you'll be the only readers of the book who know the backstory
Yes.
of that character.
Yes, she doesn't.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
Wes, I want to ask you a question to clarify something. So you're serializing. So do you run into the situation where you're 40,000 words into it and you realize you've got to go back and make some revisions, maybe all the way back in the first chapter? Or have you mapped it out carefully enough so you don't?
I don't write that way. Once it's on paper, that's it.
Okay, so you carefully.
I trust in myself enough to where unless it's at the very end and I'm just going back to do a final cleanup of the novel before we turn it into like Random House or something like that, I don't worry about it. I just don't, because what your patrons want is they want raw, unadulterated attention to you, because you're selling your creativity to them. Well, you're renting your creativity to them.
And if you do have to make changes, and you do make mistakes, or you do, I mean, I've had to like completely change how entire projects worked as part of it, just based
So that's
on
kind of
printing options for, say, like a card changing or something. I've had to change things. People like being part of that process because they can say, hey, did you know this writer was originally doing that? If you're not familiar, way back, this is one of my favorite bizarre pop culture things. Way back, Humphrey Bogart and Lauren Bacall did this movie called The Big Sleep. And because the war was ending, the studio held release of the film even though it was finished, and they released the whole kind of war films first. Meanwhile, Lauren Bacall was in another film that bombed, and the studio head was a good friend of hers and said, we need to help her out. We need to make this a better film. So they took a lot of scenes that only had 1 or 2 side characters and changed them up for bigger actors and refilmed. And they also put additional plot twists into the movie. And if you watch closely, there are scenes where in the theatrical release of this film, Humphrey Bogart has dubbed himself out to change his dialogue to make the plot twist work. Every fan has the special edition, including me, and it has the shitty original version on it, and then it has the theatrical release version, which is a much better movie, but we all think it's really cool there was that original version. And everybody is here because they want to hear about the creative process. They want to know how we work, and Patreon fans are the same way. A lot of my subscribers are other artists, other writers. They love that accessibility.
So the reason I asked the question is because I'm partially a pantser, and I'll get about 40,000 words into a book, and then I'll usually realize maybe I need to introduce a new character early on. I might need to write some scenes and adjust things, and I might move the 40,000 words out to 50,000 words without advancing the position where the book's gone. Am I hearing you say that they're interested in that kind of process?
Yes, and not only that, you might say, hey, I have 3 ideas on how to do this. I'm going to put up a vote. What do you guys think? What should we do to fix this problem in the story? Should we kill this character? Should we make this character have this happen to push their development? Like, one of the problems we have as creators is, unless we have an editor who's rating our stuff every chapter, we're not getting feedback until we've done with them a long way. But this way, you're getting it every 2 weeks, every month. Like, it's a really, at first it's really terrifying
I've stayed away from Patreon because I thought my process just made it.
People
Oh, no.
love the process.
When
What
Spencer-
the convention about the process?
When Spencer spent 3 years writing a novel, I went back and read the early posts before I joined. It was the same stuff, it was just slightly different, okay? She spent 3 years dragging people along in this writing process to write a novel. She is definitely a seat of the panther. I mean,
But if you're a huge fan of someone, you think it's really cool to be able to. I'm a huge fan of Weston, and I saw his first draft on this that was never printed, and how he developed and changed this. And I know more than all of you new fans. So fans love that. They do. But it is scary. Like Weston was talking about, like how to have that. You're having that 1-to-1, like that first when you first start doing that versus having that sort of like bookstore distribution, like between you and other people. And you definitely have to know where your boundaries are. I used to kind of, when I was younger, do absolutely everything that anyone possibly wanted. And I ended up with I've only ever had to fire one subscriber. I fired a subscriber. And it was actually because we had a total communication barrier. And they just kept requesting things. And I would get emails that are like, can you paint me a dragon for my painting this month that looks exactly like this dragon you already painted but totally different? I literally had an email that said that, and I was like, okay, it's not fair to my other subscribers to spend like time swapping 10 emails with this person every month. And I finally just said, like, you're a nice person, you can feel free to buy the finished books, but the way that this is just not working, and I apologize, I don't know if it's me or whatever it is, it's not working. And they sent me, I think, a really pissed off email, but none of us to date have been able to figure out what it actually says. So it's so confusing. So yeah, you have to know where your boundaries are for that, and know that you do not have to let your subscribers bully you anyway.
One of the other things that I looked at when I was considering becoming or looking at patrons was the old Western culture, right? Where you had your artists who had the patrons who frankly they were ordered to do it or else they would be fed. But still, I mean, the fact of the matter is there is a relationship between creator and fan. It goes back to the beginning of time, and the closer you can get to the DNA of that, the better it is, and the more the viewer feels. I mean, there are times where I love the fact that I have these people I don't even know who they are, who are reading my stuff, occasionally, and giving me really good insight into what I'm doing. But you're getting, this exclusive content that only a few people are getting.
But again, it's like as a creator, you often get in your own head, and you're like, I'm a writer, I have to like go back 40,000 words to make a change. Which of 4 changes do I like? What would make a better story? And you can second guess yourself so easily. And I think
So you send them a little
long
note
you're creating
questioning them?
isolation.
Yeah.
That's not the situation. You continue to involve other people in that.
How much time do you spend managing your Patreon or Kickstarters?
Well, it's kind. I mean, basically I've had to cut back conventions. So, and actually, I want to talk about like another thing that has become a part of that as well. It's Twitch. In the last 2 years, for every type of creator, including writers, Twitch has become huge. Which is basically a way that you can show yourself on video, talking about what you do. I did panels on Twitch as part of our virtual TusCon last year, things like that. Basically, when I am not at conventions or shipping online store orders or actually painting or writing, and sometimes I'm painting or writing on camera, it's my full-time job. Like, this is my full-time business, and it's now, it was part-time when I started. I had a day job 9 years ago, and I haven't had one since 2013. Like, this is life. And the biggest thing I can say is, if you're in doubt, ask other creators, but mostly ask people who you feel like will be your customers. If you're not comfortable with something as a customer, don't ask your fans to do that. And I tended to undervalue myself. I think most creators we tend to under or overvalue ourselves. But I learned very quickly, you're going to have people all over the world. They're not going to have a lot of money. Sometimes you need to have a way. Like, if you're a $5 subscriber to my Patreon and I have a new book that comes out, you get the digital copy for free. You just get it, it's just included. Because usually they say stick around for at least a couple months, and that way they're getting something that's worth at least $5. Sometimes my digital books are $10 or $15, so you're getting that. But then I learned very quickly that there are people who are like, I want something super special. It's a collector's item. And what I learned to do, and I would say it doesn't matter if you're an artist or not, if you make a space in your book, I put a "this book belongs to" page that has like a big blank space. So on Kickstarter, if you get this book, I think our Kickstarter tier was about $35. It included a bunch of stuff, which is what I retail this for, but you get about $10. You get the digital copy, you get bookmarks, you get other stuff. But I also sold, and you can limit both on Patreon and Kickstarter how many people can subscribe at a given tier. I sold about 80 of these for $55 a piece because I spent 20 minutes writing or drawing something on this page right here. And the only way you can get that, I won't do that for anyone at a convention, is if you Kickstarter or Patreon subscribe. So I think you can find ways, and it doesn't have the shipping weight, like things, and if you're not sure, again, ask people, like, what would you want me to do that's special? I know James Owen did the most insane Kickstarter I've ever seen. He did one once, and he basically took this part of his book, and for his highest level subscribers, there was an entire comic book of pre-stories that were different in every single book that told you backgrounds of characters drawing, and he spent like a month. But he was getting like $200 a book or something ridiculous like that. And I mean, those fans got something one of a kind that's probably worth a lot of money now. So I think you have to decide kind of where you want to put your time. That's a huge part of it.
You completely overhauled my whole thought on this process.
Well, that's good.
Well, because when I've always thought of Patreon or Kickstarter, I always thought of, hey, I want money kind of thing. And it's completely different because really you're treating these people like investors investing in your. And
But they're investors who are also fans of what you create.
Yeah.
They're like your biggest fans because
Yeah.
they're paying you for it. So yeah, a lot of people think it's just about money, and is it paying my bills? Yeah, I mean, this is I don't have traditional publishing contracts. I eventually got offered some and opted to just stick with Kickstarter because I can sell a book for $35 and make $20 of that is mine, and the rest is printing cost. And I know that if I go the traditional route, that won't be the case. So I don't need to sell as many copies. And I love that most of my Kickstarters are under 300 people. I love that. I can sign things. People like, I had someone email me once and said, "Don't you want to make $50,000 a Kickstarter and mail to like 2,000 people?" I'm like, no. For me as a creator, I want to spend as much time creating, and I want to be able to have things that kids can afford. I want to be able to have things that like working parents can afford for their kids, for themselves, and sign things. And as much as I'm sure if you guys have ever had, I'm in Weston, you must have had some annoying fan interactions, at least at conventions. As much as you've had people who are, you're like, oh God, they have no personal boundaries. You also have the people where that interaction, whether it's on Patreon or in person, like it makes your day. I have a family on the East Coast. I've never met them. It's parents and 2 kids, a little boy and a little girl. And every book I do, they buy 3 copies. 1 copy is signed to the entire family and gets put away and no one ever touches it. It's the collector's book. And 1 is signed for the little boy and 1 is signed for the little girl. And I will always remember 6 years ago, she was about 5 years old. My boyfriend and I got together, and eventually there was a photo of us at a convention, and we've been together for 2 years. And I got an email from her mom, and it said, she wanted me to tell you she's okay with being your number 2 fan now because she understands that your boyfriend has to be number 1. This little like 6-year-old girl. But I was like, I feel like those are the moments that like you don't get if you're not having that almost like that 1-to-1, and then make you kind of motivated.
And it's the epitome of social media.
Yeah.
It's the
good
positive.
side.
It's the
Yeah.
positive
Yeah.
side of it
Exactly.
versus the negative side that we see a lot of out there. As
What
well.
it aspires to be.
So the question that I have is, and I'll start with kind of a statement, for someone who is a creator but doesn't have a fan base yet. This seems, the analogy that I can draw is kind of like blogging. When you start out blogging, you have nobody out there listening, and eventually people find you, however they find you, and they start getting engaged with you. Is, for someone in that situation, is something like Patreon or Kickstarter going to work that same way, where there's going to be no action initially, and then hopefully it will start to build?
What happened for me, and I encounter a lot of, this is especially true if I encounter any creator under the age of 20, they want like the analogy you think of is they want to go buy a hammer, some nails, and some boards, set them down, and have a house built for them because they don't understand that like just because you're using a tool, the tool doesn't do the work for you. What I always recommend is when you start out, start with not monthly subscriptions, but one-off crowdfunding if you can, unless you already have a fan base, obviously. And do something small. So if you can do a small black and white book, something that costs you under $500 for your minimum print run, something that's a very reasonable goal, something like that will usually get funded on Kickstarter, even if you don't already have, like, I didn't have like a virtual fan base for my first book, which was black and white. And I almost didn't make it, but then some crazy person pledged $200 and had me donate books to children, and that was actually how I got started. But yeah, I started from very small projects, and with Kickstarter especially, you usually have very low goals, like here's the book in this format, and if we raise 10 grand, we'll do more. But I think there's also a misconception for both Patreon and Kickstarter that you need thousands of people to make any money. I mean, I have like 100 subscribers, and it's paying my mortgage on Patreon. It's not that many. And on this Kickstarter, we had 230 people fund it, and we made $24,000. So yeah, so it isn't as many people as you think.
Now you said being involved in Kickstarter for games, or games, and some of those 10,000.
And I actually talked to some other people because I do playing cards often with my art and stuff like that. I talked to some creators who had raised like $80,000, $100,000, and I realized they're not making any more money than I am per month because they're doing such giant print runs, and it takes them so long to get at the product out there, and then they're shopping things around to fulfillment places like stores to stock their stuff, which is entirely a viable thing. But as a creator, like we're talking about, you have to choose where do you want to put your time and your energy. And for me, I want to put as much of it as possible into creating. So I do 3 to 5 Kickstarters a year and just do projects with a couple hundred people so that I can just keep making stuff because that's what I want to do. I want to minimize shipping. And if anybody has like specific questions about like, well, okay, how do you budget for shipping and who do you use for shipping and all that, I put a lot of that on my website, but you can also just come ask me at the booth in the vendor hall and I'll be like, here's a bunch of information because it's a lot for like one panel. How many subscribers do you have? You probably have way more than me.
No.
I feel like.
No, I have 25.
Oh, okay. But they motivate you to do stuff every month, and
They do, and I was just thinking about, one of the things I really like about my Kickstarter is that, my patrons is, like if something's going down in the world, right? Something's happening in the world right now. I can throw out a poem out there that I create extemporaneously, or I can just throw an essay out there. And I have instantaneous comments by instantaneous people who actually care. It's not just the like you get on Facebook or stuff like that. It's these people actually care because they're invested in you. And so the response you get from them is different than
but
the
it's very rewarding.
you get from somebody else.
Like that motivation, that feedback to me is at least half of it. Money and being able to do what you want with your books for a living is awesome. But constantly having people who are saying something is a good idea. And I learned very quickly. So I brought this book up here because of I used to think I had to be a serious writer. And you guys laugh, but like when I did my early books, I was spending time researching like, how do you tell if an animal is taking off from its footprint? So if I put that in a dragon field guide and somebody who knows that reads it, they will know that like it's correct. Like I was very scientific.
They know how a dragon.
You can actually tell from like a bird's footprints when they take off, like what the depth is and how you tell someone's running or jumping. And I learned all of that stuff. And I was doing a lot of that. And one of the biggest things that Patreon helped me is to realize people love when I'm ridiculous. So when I was working on this book, this is the one we actually had in our panel last night because this was a book I had an idea for when I was 12.
What's the title?
Dragon Plus. It is dragons and other creatures all mixed together. And one of my Patreon subscribers said, you may not know about this mythologically, but if you're doing this book, this creature won't even be in here. You have to include a kotobuki. And I was like, what the hell is a kotobuki? I know my mythology. A kotobuki is an animal that is in Japanese mythology that is comprised of every Oriental zodiac animal, and it's very specific. Like it has the ears of a rabbit and the belly of a dragon. I was like, that's cool. When I was putting up a list of creatures to vote on, I was like, I'm just gonna put some stupid things on it just to see if people notice it. And they got the most votes, which is why there is indeed a flamingo unicorn in this book. But if you're like, if you feel like you can't break through whatever, even if you're an established writer, whatever your boundaries are as a writer, because you're known for this, a lot of times you'll be surprised that your friends will be like, why don't I want you to do this? Because you don't know. Like you get all these like walls and ideas and misconceptions in your head, and that support that Weston's talking about, where somebody will like just understand where you're coming from as a creator, is huge. Because even if you have an editor, and they're a great editor, they're not going to want you emailing them like random poems and stuff. Like, hey, I had a bad day, I wrote this. Can you tell me if it's any good? And they're like, what does this have to do with our project? Like, they don't want to hear that. But your fans do, and it's really cool to have that support and have that understanding. And it also, I think, adds value to your work when people like now more and more understand how much work goes into books. Like it's demystifying kind of that process for people, which I think is good. They used to think that we just sort of like meditated and the book mystically appeared completed in front of us. It's all natural. We don't actually do it.
That's level 10 writer.
That's level 10. I'm at like 1.5 right now.
Just sacrifice the fan and let the blood.
Yeah, a huge part of it is what's the perceived value of what you're offering people. And if you're not sure, ask them. So sometimes I'll be like, hey, if we offered this, the value for retail would be this, the price you guys would have to pay would be a little less, this is what it would be, here are the other options. And they'll tell you like, oh no, it will sell at this price, like, because you don't know. And a lot of times as a creator, I think you undervalue yourself. You're like, oh no, no one will pay this much for like a draft of my book that's incomplete and has typos. And something like that.
So if anybody, after this panel, you guys are thinking about it, the next couple days, and if you guys are thinking about doing Patreon, reach out to me, because what I'll do is I will link you to the same thing that Amanda Palmer read.
Yeah, I'd like to read that too.
It's kind of like a treatise on that somebody else wrote, and it's like, who are you to think that people don't want to pick your work? Who are you? I mean, you don't know. This is what people think, and it's really touching. It's really precognizant, and it's really very smart in the way that it comes across, and it kind of gives you permission to do that thing that you kind of want to. Because if you guys are anybody like me, I don't like retail. I don't like to hand sell anything, and for a long time I thought Patreon was hand selling things. It's not. Patreon's a partnership.
And Kickstart is really the same way. Often you're sending someone like your book, but they are very much involved in the printing, shipping, and the more honest you are about that whole process, the more likely you are not only to have people want to be a part of it, but to feel good. Like I've looked at Kickstarter projects where I have liked the project and not ended up pledging to it because the person was charging some weird exorbitant amount for shipping and not explaining why. And one person I even asked, and they said, well, we found that international shipping was so expensive, so we averaged shipping, US and international, we kept charging everyone the same amount for shipping. And I'm like, what? That's really weird. Like, how did you arrive at that conclusion? And I didn't end up backing the project because I thought asking me to pay $25 for book shipping in the US was ridiculous, so.
Question, I'm in the process of self-publishing through KDP, Kindle Digital Publishing.
Right.
How does Patreon, like, releasing, like, say I want to do a tier of like $5 and you get a digital copy of the book without having to go through Amazon? Does that conflict with their
So that's actually something I have to deal with, so it's a very good question. With KDP, you are, there's no restrictions, but if you choose to be in the Kindle Unlimited program, your digital copy has to be available only from Kindle while it's in the program. So if you are offering, say, PDFs to your subscribers on Kickstarter, like I often are, like I said, you'll get a digital copy of my book. Well, later after that, when it's released on Kindle, I usually do Kindle Unlimited, and if you guys don't know Kindle Unlimited and you are self-publishing, it's a program to explore. Basically, people pay $10 a month. You can read anything in Kindle Unlimited, and Amazon takes all of the money from Kindle Unlimited. They keep none of it. They divide it up amongst pages read for authors. And you're like, that's not that much. Yeah, they get $39 million. So even if there's billions of pages read, if someone reads this book on Kindle Unlimited, I'll get $1.50 and have to do nothing, and my fans don't have to pay any extra to read it. So you want to definitely look for those options, but if you talk to me like in the vendors hall afterwards, I'll tell you because I publish some things through KDP and some things through Ingram, and if you're self-help, obviously that's a different panel, but I can tell you like what the advantages are and show you, because I have things printed by both at my booth, so I can show you what the differences are. If that helps. And likewise, if you guys have questions later today, you can ask me here, but you can also like take my card, send me an email. I'm very friendly about like, here's information, and I won't tell you you're doing it wrong. I'll just give you information so you can try to make choices that work for you. I also want to get that one from you because I want to read that now. I'm very curious.
Weston Ochse at gmail.com. So just email me this right here, and I'll shoot you the link.
What was that again?
Weston Ochse at gmail.com. I'm in the guide.
I feel like your blogger here has been through it. I feel like you must have done like 20 more panels.
It's my fault. It's my fault. I kept forgetting my name tag, so I used him and so many times.
I still think we you know what? I'm just gonna look at where we can get them made for us, and we'll just have little metal ones that we'll just bring ourselves to shows. We do enough conventions.
I have one of those from my old somewhere from my old office.
If we can get like lightweight metal ones, then we can just bring.
So the dog ain't your homework?
So a huge part of if you are doing Kickstarter, Patreon, whatever it is as a creator, you decide how much you want to learn business and how much you just want to partner with someone. So sometimes if you don't want to learn the whole business side or put a day a month into keeping up to date, you might choose to work with a publisher, a small press publisher who does Kickstarters or invest in your book themselves. Or you might choose to work with like a game company that will take your art, your book, your project, whatever, and do it as part of what they do. So you can choose at all different levels. But I will say this: if you are budgeting time and money for Patreon work and for Kickstarter work, figure out what it's going to take you and add extra time always, because things will go wrong. You will get a cold, or printing will take longer, or something will happen. And if you have extra time and you don't need it, then people get stuff early. So if you figure out, like on Patreon, what you can provide, like you're serializing per month, what you can provide, figure out what you could do and how much time it would take, and then tell people you're providing less. And then if you have time for that, we're getting bonus content, cool. But then you're not like running yourself into the ground for it, because it will take more time. It will take over your life. At least for me. I don't know how much time we have left.
10 minutes.
10 minutes, okay. We have more questions?
Bonus questions.
Bonus questions.
If you're issuing revisions, does Patreon have a means for doing that, or you just kind of use common sense and good judgment or bad judgment?
You can actually edit previous posts, and you can choose when you edit them if it should email people there's a revised post. So you could choose to just edit it and have it email everybody again.
And they have it automatically set up to, send it out to everybody it was sent out to before?
Yeah, you can have it
cool.
do that. Or I think you could make a new one and say, I think that to me, it'd be better to make a new post and say, here's the new version of this. And then actually even go find your old post and link it and say, here's what we changed. Like look at how we revised this. Because again, you're going to have a lot of people, whether they ever want to be writers or artists or whatever it is or not, who just find how you develop things fascinating. It's like, to us, this is grunt work. To people who have no idea how this works, it's literally magic. They're like, how did this happen? So I used to be that person who's like, I'll just post like really pretty art when it's like at a point where the painting looks mostly done. No, people love seeing like shitty sketches of mine with badly spelled notes and stuff. They love that stuff. And they love the behind the scenes stuff. It's like movies. How often do you like seeing the bloopers as much as the movie? Because you like understanding.
So you may have to post Please do not correct my spelling. This is just a draft.
Oh yeah,
Oh, yeah.
it's very clear that that it is to be edited by someone who will catch every place I have used the word bread instead of breed, which I do all of the time. I constantly talk about breading dragons.
But actually, that led to people requesting me to write a cookbook, so.
They're crunchy and tasty.
They're crunchy, yes. Right. Yeah, if you're a writer, I'm sure you guys know that you have typos, you make a lot, and mine is fairly comical. But your fans, like, they love that. They love those. We all love those stories. That's why we go to panels here. We love hearing those stories of the weird typos and processes.
Does Patreon provide a methodology for polling your readers, or do you just ask them and have them email you?
You
or?
can do polls. When you choose what type of post you're doing, you can choose things like it's an image, it's just text, it's a video. When you do a poll, you have the option of saying people can vote for multiple things. They can pick only one option, and you could put if there's a start and end time. So they pretty much did cover all of that. And I actually was one of those people who refused to have a Patreon when it started because I felt like it was too new, the technology wasn't, like they just didn't implement things well. But 2017, which had probably been around 2 or 3 years at that point, when people started asking me, they wanted to like see my works in progress on paintings, and I was like, would you pay $1 a month? I will just throw up pictures of stuff that looks crappy, that's fine. And I was really surprised to like learn that people wanted more. One thing I did figure out this year, I always feel like an idiot saying this because I think it took me way too long to figure this out, is that people can subscribe to your Patreon, look at a bunch of your content for a month, and then cancel the subscription and come back a month later or 2 months later, 3 months later, just check in with you once in a while. Well, that's fine, but I was like, I want to motivate people. Patreon, a year or two ago, started offering a year-long subscription, and you can actually choose how much of a discount someone gets, up to 10% if they subscribe for a year. So you can even say, end of the year, we're making that discount more to encourage people to prepay a whole year. So I said, what if we do a thing where we offer like a t-shirt that only Patreon subscribers get at the end of the year, and you can buy it. This way shipping is covered, but for every month you subscribe, I will include like a bookmark or a sticker or something else. So if you subscribe 12 months, you're getting 12 little bits. They cost me 10 cents a piece. That'll go in there, but there'll only be things you get as a Patreon subscriber. So we're trying that out this year, and if you ask me at con next year, I'll tell you how that went. But yeah, if you can figure out things to give people incentives, or to me it's incentives, but it's also a way to reward people. The more that they spend their time and money on what I do, the more I want them to have.
Does Patreon keep track of who gets what tier?
Yes.
For you, so you know which tier gets this version.
Not only that, but you can actually choose what your benefits are, because they deal. So Patreon had this little headache for the last couple of years when sales tax cracked down on them and said we need to charge on some things. But obviously, sales tax is not charged on some types of things. You get to vote on what I paint. You're not being charged a sales tax fee for that. But if I'm sending you a print in the mail, that is a taxable thing. So what they had people do is say, on this tier, how much of it is which type of benefit? And you can choose on your benefit, this is something that is physically mailed. They have to give us an address, and it is mailed once a month. And then at the end of the month, it'll say, you have X number of print benefits to send people, or X number of digital benefits, so that you have, they've worked on that the last couple of years. It's very easy to use now.
So they will, it's basically a place that you can go that has all these addresses you have to mail this prints to these 10 people.
Yep, and you can even export it as a spreadsheet and have it run envelopes out of software and not even have to do anything. It's awesome.
What am I making all your envelopes?
I don't know. I've been
hand printing all your labels, Wes.
Where on Patreon can you send the addresses?
Any of the
is it part of the relationship manager?
Yeah, there's a place in there where you can just click a little button. It's really not obvious. It says CSV file, and it will give you a spreadsheet.
Right. Okay.
And most software, like Microsoft Word or anything, you can have it give you. Yeah, no, it's much easier. Yeah. They took them a while. They have reworked the relationship manager and the benefits manager in Patreon 4 or 5 times. The thing is, Patreon does actively listen to requests and things. And the one thing I have asked for over and over again that they don't do, and I think it's because they don't understand why people want it, is you can't buy subscriptions for other people. And I would love to be able to say, hey, if you go on my Kickstarter and you buy an original painting, you'll get 2 months of Patreon free. Because somebody could go check it out. It would be like, I can't do that. There's no way to do that. And it's been on their request list for a while. So there's a few things like that that I would love to.
I will go to Patreon and I will request it also.
I think they're not understanding that because they also haven't looked at Twitch business model, and one of the big things on Twitch is a lot of people give subscriptions to others. And I've even had like grandparents be like, I want to get my daughter a Patreon subscription, but like, how do we do this? Because we have to make an account for her and put my credit card on it or my PayPal. So it's kind of one of those things where that's my one complaint I wish they would fix, because I think they're missing a lot of potential subscribers that way.
Can you tell us a little bit about this Twitch thing?
So 2 years ago, I had no idea what Twitch was.
Like me.
I thought it was something related to video games, which it was. It was originally developed as a way for people who play video games to show themselves playing video games to people all over the world. But then it evolved, and especially during all of the pandemic stuff, it evolved a lot. And now Twitch is a way for you to show anyone what you're doing. You can go watch videos of otters live feeds of otters at the zoo if you want to. You can watch your favorite DJs spinning on a Saturday night. Or you can watch me doing oracle readings with my decks or working on paintings.
Without like a password.
In fact, you don't even have to have an account. You can just go watch it. But if you want to go in the chat, you need a username. It's completely free.
So that's how it differs.
That's how it differs from Zoom. But it's publicly available. And people can even rewatch past videos for a certain amount of time. And the cool thing about it is that you have the option of having subscribers there who do get additional benefits there as well. So it's another way to sort of, I've gotten a lot of Patreon subscribers from people seeing me painting on Twitch and going, how can I support you? So that's like a big part of it. I think we're probably about time.
All I know is you make my shipping department really happy.
And I'll say this, if you guys are shipping anything at all, whether it's just Christmas presents or you are shipping stuff professionally, you should be using something called Pirate Ship. It is a godsend. It is completely free. It is the most amazing thing because it will take CSV files and it will do all of your packages for you. And it will also, it pretty much does everything you'd ever want a shipping thing to do, and unlike stamps.com, it's free. It's amazing. It has changed my life. And it also has a discount program for international shipping, which is much cheaper. So even if you're just shipping Christmas presents, just their interface, you're like, what did I ship? Like, oh, here's where it is on a map.
What's that called again?
It's really easy to remember. It's called Pirate Ship. It's been around for about 2 years, and it has like made my job about a third faster for me.
I don't
I've
been aware
Thank you for listening to the Creative Play and Podcast Network. And feel free to enjoy our other shows, such as D&D Journey of the 5th Edition, and Scion Ragnarok and Roll, a Scion hero to Ragnarok story. Thank you for listening.